founder and artistic director of the Y Collective, and we are thrilled to have you here for this workshop presentation of Words of the Prophets by Vayl Larkin. Vayl Larkin is an amazing poet that's a member of our collective, and this is their first full-length poem written into a one-act play. So as you've heard, it's about 1 hour, no intermission, and Vayl is watching from home, so we can say, hi, Vayl! Hello. This piece is very special to us. It's very special to Vayl. It is dealing with a lot of heavy topics. So we want to give you ample content warning. First of all, that the subject matter is heavy. It was written from the perspective of Vayl, who experienced homelessness for quite some time, and all the characters in this show are based on members of the homeless community in which Vayl lived. So this is meant to be a humanizing piece to demonstrate all of the good and the bad and the community that can be found in any group of people where love is shared. So take that on, come with an open heart and open mind. Know that there is some visual and oral content warning that you should be aware of regarding self-harm, suicide, and loud, sudden noises. If anyone feels uncomfortable or triggered by that, please feel free to see Hannah at the door and she'll help you out. No hard feelings whatsoever. If there's anything else you need, you have our full permission to get up and to exit the space safely. This is, don't feel tied to your chair. We do know this is heavy stuff. However, if you stick it through to the end, I hope you will see that there is some joy and lightness to be found at the end. All right, without further ado, this is Words of the Prophets by Vayl Larkin. Enjoy.
The stories in this cycle illustrate a number of challenges faced by members of the homeless community, most especially those experienced by individuals who are typically shunned socially. Because of this, there are traumatic topics addressed with frankness, though we attempt to avoid graphic language for the sake of survivors in the room. Please remember, this world of ours is shaded in a million hues, and that sorrow and joy are not mutually exclusive. Grieve for their struggles, but open your eyes to their vitality. Special content warning for sexual abuse and assault, war, PTSD, child abuse, racism, police violence, gender violence, and transphobia.
Average life expectancy in the U.S., 76 years. Average life expectancy of a U.S. homeless person, 44 years. Non-white Americans make up 40% of the general population of the U.S. Non-white Americans make up at least 52% of the homeless population. The U.S. government acknowledges that their counts of Native and undocumented Americans experiencing homelessness are limited and almost certainly underestimated.
Let's talk basics. At least 585,000 people each night are without a stable residence, without the benefit of utilities or secure space for possessions in the United States of America. This number was counted in 2020, before the results of the pandemic. Of these people, approximately 35% are without any shelter whatsoever. These are the people you see in doorways, in parks, in alleys, digging through trash bins, standing around barrel fires, and desperately trying to survive in a world that rips down their tents, burns their belongings, and dumps bleach on their food. We call these people, as well as the thousands who sleep at the whim of whomever owns the couch, the floor, the bed they sleep in, homeless, or more obliquely, unhoused, as though the softness of those syllables can possibly express how raw a life is, where to be without a home is not enough, where the authorities must possess or destroy everything else the desperate could cling to for safety. They are out there right now, more than 500,000 people without a home. So many of them exposed to the elements as our climate shifts and each weather report seems to bring more death. We have not nearly begun to account for them all. Anyone we don't consider a legal member of our nation, we simply ignore. They are not given services. They are not given aid. They are left forgotten at the very farthest margins of our society. Homelessness is a sign that we have failed fundamentally as a country. We do not protect even our own. And yet, life moves. Life stretches and tests its cages carefully. Each waking day, each breathing moment. And even at the fringe, there is hope, love, and charity. More, especially at the borders of what we call the real world, empathy runs rampant. And the desperate love just as desperately. You've heard the stories. The sex worker with a golden soul, the mad who tell truths, the frightened, reaching hearts beating in the chests of everyone crying to the sky, screaming to be heard. You've heard those voices sometimes, yes, but there are so many more. there are at least 500,000 fantastic, expansive, high-flying spirits living where you fear to tread. Imagine what they could do if every hour was not a fight for life. Imagine who we could all be with those hearts and minds freed from hunger, want, and deprivation. See how much there is to believe, where you would never go. Love, pain, art, truth, life, life, life. See and imagine.
Up to 2 million people in the United States are actively engaged in sex work. 80% of sex workers worldwide are women and girls between the ages of 13 and 25. At least 90% of people who engage in sex work must give part or all of their earnings to a pimp, whether individual, club, or organization, in addition to supporting themselves and any other dependents.
Once there was someone who dreamed themselves into a different person in order to escape hell. They were born there and never knew anything else. But they had heard stories about far-off lands where the air did not burn and love was not lies. The tricky thing about hell is, if they recognize you, they have you. They know your heart, and they've tasted your pain. You must transform completely. Reshaped, someone flew far, far away and left those hounds leagues behind. They never did change back like they thought they might, but they did change again and again, and so did many other things.
She isn't in the night. She isn't present. No passion, no passing thoughts. She narrows to a blade of sharpened senses. Only the still can see the unseen, can taste the flavorless, can hear sobs from the future and silence from the past. She writes a name in lipstick on the scratched steel of a bus station bathroom stall. It isn't hers, but she remembers who it belonged to before dark. She isn't in the night. She's a skin changer, a werewoman, flesh made monstrous. She is wrapped in scraps like something crawling from a tomb. They should fear her accusing eyes, and a knife she hides in her boot. But they believe what they see, alive and blinded by their own security. She scribbles numbers on an old receipt for a book. She hands it to the man.
In the night, in this room, in this bed, in these arms.
She isn't in the night. She isn't in this room. She isn't in this bed. She isn't in these arms or under this weight. And she isn't being broken by the crushing callousness of it all. She feigns a struggle, so much more interesting for them than a sigh. She sees his eyes cold and void for an instant before she remembers where she is and where she isn't. She draws a horse on a motel notepad while he is washing. She isn't in the night. She's in daylight. And the open sky over water, and the feeling of being as far from home as she can run in a day. And she is running away into the wilderness of the future. She writes in a journal, not about anything she knows, but only gentle things. She still burns them when they are filled in case any truths have seeped through. She's in firelight too. She's in the glow of the coals, in the rising smoke, escaping skyward. She isn't in the night. She makes her way down narrow, winding, rough-ridden roads. She sees what she sold. It was a reclamation at first, a reassertion of rights. The right to have, to hold, to give and to get. It was an exchange instead of the usual theft. At first. She wonders now if she really ever believed that, or if she only wished to. She scratches shame into her forearm. She isn't in the night. She isn't right. She writes her ciphers on the surface of this world. They are her legacy, her lamentation, her dream of what life could have been for someone else. She isn't present. Isn't prescient. She doesn't know the end of her own epic yet. She isn't in the night. She isn't. The night isn't rising. It's fading to bright. She tells herself the story of tomorrow.
Of the total population of the United States are military veterans. The number is 50% higher in the homeless population. More than half of homeless veterans are disabled.
Once there was a young soldier who screamed and screamed every single night until someone heard and woke him and showed him the day again. This story was first told all in a rush in that time between midnight and dawn, when everything else is still and the shrouded silence of the world takes us back to a time before walls, before safety. The soldier cried, and so did someone who sat with him. The nightmares did not vanish completely, not for long. But the screaming slowed, and then softened, and then one night fell into slumber.
The sound of the photocopier humming and running along. He loses time, loses the thread of the story. The story slips back and forth, repetitions piling. Their weight presses on him, pushing him to the past. Dull, dusty thud of boots on baked dirt roads. The rocks rise on all sides, plenty of curves and crevices. His head creaks round again, and the weight of all those drumming footsteps presses him into the ground. Time slows, and he sees her. She is standing directly ahead, bare feet flat on rutted road. She looks at him, her eyes wide. He sees the gun in her hands. Rat-tat-tat! He never felt his fingers move. Chick-chick. The final page gently rocks onto the stack. He gathers them, turns, and walks out. Ring-a-ling! Into the street, the heavy tread of his boots on concrete comforts him as the rush and hustle of the crowd swallows his breath. Bang! And bang again! His eyes are not working, blinded by the glare of hot sun on glass, and he is deafened by the blood rushing in his ears. The girl is standing, all of 12. She is wearing a paper white cloth that wraps around her head to keep the sun off. She is worried about the sun. He sees the gun. Falling. He is falling, prone in the street, hands on head, ducked down. Bang! Bang! Who knows where bang it's coming from, but it's bang pushing him past and past the pit, and the fenced lot nearby gapes hungrily. The clutching fingers of fear dig furrows into his chest. It's all back, here, now, and immediately. The sun streams through columns of dust around their path. The girl stands up or steps out. Somehow she is there. He sees her eyes looking into his, both surprised. He sees the gun. Rat-a-tat! His breath breaks in, and then the rising roar of the crowd surrounding him, passing and pressing him, and threshing his carefully stacked stories into a flurry. He thinks the sun was harder than this. Rushing past his teeth, and down as deep as memory, bathing that knot of frantic flight in sweet, inflammable air. She stood there, all of 12 on the road. Rat-a-tat! Rat-a-tat! She stood there. She was worried about the sun. Eyes wide. That gun falling, falling. Paper white rags in the dust. He never felt his fingers move. Rat-a-tat! He gathers a few loose pages. He half-heartedly pastes one to a telephone pole. No one walking reads. But the print is too small to see anyway. Rat-tat-tat. Rat-tat-tat-tat. Wind rattles paper on scratched metal. It isn't at all the same sound.
.4 million American children are homeless. Approximately 700,000 are unaccompanied by a parent or guardian. Of those children, an estimated 40% are members of the LGBTQIA+ community.
Once there was a young man called Christopher Robin. He was always called this, but it was not his name. His mother, schizophrenic. No father, no siblings. He raised himself on the street, and his mother too. He was hard-won muscle and stoicism, but his eyes and voice were always gentle. He sold doors that were illegal to people not permitted to take up any room. It was an improvement, he felt, on the things that children must sometimes endure to live. He was beautiful and stronger than he let on. No easy meat.
We're waking up. The smell of sun-warmed dust like a promise in the air. No huddling and huffing a damp day away. No, we're rising. All of us together, our fledgling flock. We're shaking off torn blankets and dreams of some mysterious world where we're children instead of what we are, free. We're sharing out food filched the night before, have to fuel the day's dance. We're that fast. Our boards, our bodies, hard and lean. We slide past onto teeming streets. We slip along through narrowing mazes of steel and flesh, horns and hollers to cheer us on our way. Speed's not the only trick, but it's the real rush, the roaring, soaring sweetness, the ecstasy of falling forever. We're not aiming at that final target. We just won't flinch if it hits. We're alive. More than all those stiff-collar, souped-up specimens living their aquarium lives, watched constantly by their bosses for any sign they should be fished out and left to flounder. They always walk with grim faces, like they're going to be late for the part where food falls from the sky. They're trapped, but at least they're comfortable, they say into their pillows at night. We're breaking the concrete waves of the here, the now, the never-ending moment. We're not the face of the future, and none of us look back, not once. We are racing toward. We're not racing toward, but away. And who would blame birds who fled a burning nest? We may flee, but we're still flying. Flying, sky high forever. We're a liquid. We fill our space. We flow, foaming around obstacles and splitting fractal-like into deltas of scintillating energy. We are moved by every pebble on the pavements, but we stop for nothing. We seethe, scouring our paths, scoring the dust of the road in wild whirls. We ride. And we wear down the hardness of the city.
At least 4.5% of the U.S. population is suffering from a severe mental illness right now. In homeless communities, that number is 33%. The benefit for low-income Americans who cannot be gainfully employed is $380 per month lower than the national minimum wage.
Once, long ago, there was an accomplished surgical nurse who gave up her career to become a mother. By the time she was 31, she had 8 children. By the time she was 32, she had tried to murder most of them. By the time she was 33, she was dead by her own hand. Her grown children still remember the delusions and violence, but they also remember her intellect, her kindness, and her love, before the disease took it all by force. Perhaps she saved them from herself, but then this left deep wounds too. Better for something to have saved her first, after all.
They came in the night again, stealing, grabbing, breaking, using, always at her throat, every time the sun downs. She could find them in the light if the stars would let her see. They crackle like fire in her eyes, and she has to cover them or die. They don't believe her where the beds live. She tries, on those coldest of colds, to make them see the danger. But they say, knife out, you in, or both out together. So she takes her knife, and she goes home to the sky. Sunlight is safer, barely. The sun is a star, but simple and yellow young. The ancient giants are the ones to watch out for, reaching their tendrils of dying fire through the meat of their own orbits. Their incipient malignancy, the coming hole in time. She knew it was them, those voids behind the aging light, who sent out their spiders and blind, crawling nightmares to torture her. She knew them, had studied their secrets, and she knew a singularity when she saw one, even if it was shrouded in smiling flesh. Sometimes they would come for her, wide-eyed and shining like a fusion bomb, and she would fight them back, until the shocking touch of their fangs laid her down, and dropped her knife from nerveless hands. She can almost remember, sometimes after they have brought her here, after the needles and the sweet sips of something that is not water. Figures and equations dance just out of sight. Her vision clears for only a moment. She sees truths. And then they say, you out, knife in, you're safe now. So back she goes, the light sliding from her in waves. She shakes her head, looks at the low sun, and hurries to find something sharp for the knife. Somewhere safe from the horizon.
Up to 47% of homeless people are employed in a legal job. It is not possible to estimate how many homeless people work in illegal industries, including sex work, the drug market, and any job that pays under the table. U.S. minimum wage, $7.25. Average U.S. living wage, $13.10.
Once there was a musician. He lived on music, breathed it in like air, grew it like skin covering him. He fled hell on dreams of far-off lands, and after many treacherous roads, found one. He lived in his wagon until they took it away, and then he lived where he could. Someone gave him a job with no reference or home to his banished name, and fed him too. He found his feet in time and set off on a more level path to adventure beyond the daydreams of his former self. But the city air on cold concrete still sings in his voice, and he will never leave it entirely behind.
Perfect spot. Perfect day. The sun shrouded just enough to keep the glare out of the eyes of passers-by. The old doorway, great locked tight with rusted chain, deep enough to tuck himself inside. No one tips a tripping hazard. He opens his case and takes out a guitar covered in layers of old stickers. And he sits down. His hair is blue, water falling down half his face. The sides shaved. He wears a suit coat and suit pants and a vest and a newsboy cap, and none of them match. And none of them are their original colors. It's hard to say if home was ever a part of his vocabulary. He has gentle eyes, and the hands that touch the guitar are careful and caring. He starts to play. He sings, "Love, love will tear us apart again. Love, love will tear us apart again." While walking past, a black-clad girl hums to the rhythm of some other song playing on her phone. She doesn't need to hear it anyway. It's already something she's known for too long. He sees her gutter punk eyes and the stamps on her hands and changes the tune to something she can dance to. The boys on the corner, playing hard at being men. They are hard as their guns and tricky to handle. They are full of the powder of their desperation, ready to explode at a spark. They're trying so hard. My makeup may be flaking, but my smile. He sings and sings to them again, sending their bruised hearts all the love they won't believe they still need. The night larks go by in a group. Though there should be something better for them. A word for them rampant. For their ringing laughter. A rejoicing of them. A rapture of them. A resistance. Okay, ladies, now let's get information. Okay, ladies, now let's get information. Prove to me you got some coordination. Okay, ladies, now let's get information. He chants. The guitar his only echo. He thinks how hard it must be for them to sell the bodies they were banished for building from boys to men who would never own them as a daughter. Her small form very, barely visible behind the hulk of the man.
She is a pallid, hollow-eyed angel. Clouds of red curls around a face of bruised porcelain. He knows where she is going. He does not know the man. Doesn't have to. He knows who she is. Welcome, he whispers to her. Welcome to the Black Parade. We are all your family now. He plays the day on, singing the songs of the silent, the strange, the shy, and the sincere. For who is more sincere and honest than the outcast? He sings, the words of the prophets are written on the subway walls and tenement halls. He sings, are written and shouted and carved into flesh. The soldiers, the skaters, the sisters in sin, the lost legends, the subterranean, the lives that happen when we look away.
Thank you all so much for coming. We're thrilled to have you here to witness this very first iteration of this piece. It is a workshop, so we would love your feedback, good, bad, and otherwise, so that we can take it to the next level and reach more people and do it even better. There are some stickers on the ground, so these are the stickers that are for sale. We have one, they've all been custom designed by our artists in our collective for this show. Julian as a butterfly with a guitar. I think you all need one on your guitar. So check those out. We will have a talk back with the cast, and we will zoom in the playwright onto the wall here for your questions. No pressure to stay. This is for us to learn and answer questions for future, as I said. So take about 10-15 minutes. There are concessions available. Chat amongst yourselves, and then we will sneak some chairs from the front row of each of these blocks up for the talk back. No pressure to stay, as I said, but we'd love to have your feedback. Thanks a lot. Yeah. Thank you. I hope nobody's doing it. Thank you for coming. Sebastian,
Yes.
do we have a playwright on the wall?
Working on it.
Okay. In the meantime, I want everyone to just go down the line, introduce themselves. You all know me already. I'm Sydney. I am the artistic director of the Y Collective and also music director of this piece, and I made sounds from up in the rafters. That was me. So that was my role in this piece. I would like to go down the line and introduce yourself, your name, and what you did in this show.
My name is Alberto Madero. I'm an ASL interpreter / performer for this piece. I also was the narrator for the voice Norm that was projected on the wall. And I also was standing giving sound description, basically really the feeling of each scene, because each character had their own feeling and their own music that was like in the background, so that's what I was doing, and I was standing there in the corner. That was my role.
Hello, everyone. My name is Melanie Chaitu. This is my name sign. My role is I was director of artistic sign language as well as performer and narrator as well. So, that's me. Hello, everyone. Can everyone see me? Okay, great. Hi. My name is Dickie Hartz, and this is my sign name as well. And my pronouns are he and him. And for this piece, I was the narrator. Well, I'm sorry, let's go back for a second. I also identified as deaf, gay, and thank you all.
How am I supposed to follow that? You're too cool.
I mean, just be yourself.
All right, I guess so. Hello, my name is Julian. I played the narrator body character, we're sort of, you probably gleaned this at the end, but we're sort of, a lot of us are the same character. I sat in the center here and played music. My pronouns are he, him, and I also am one of the members of the Y Collective at large here in residence at the Cell Theater this season.
My name is Justin. I played Broadside Body, is the name of the character, or the soldier as you may recognize him. This is my first production with the Y Collective. Very happy to have been a part of it. That's me.
Hi, my name is Mary Angela Granberry. I played the part of Trump Loyal, body, also the schizophrenic nurse. My pronouns are she, her. I am a core collective member, so I'm a part of every piece this season with the Y here at the Cell. Thank you for being here.
Hey y'all, my name is Jane K. Enzo. I use they, them pronouns. I directed this wonderful piece in collaboration with these individuals, and I also danced Graffiti Body.
I would love to shout out one cast member. Well, we have two cast members that aren't here, but Marco will be with us momentarily. One cast member that couldn't be here in person throughout this process, and the role of the storyteller, which you saw projected on the wall, was written for Norm Maddox. And so Norm is having some health issues, and we decided that through the power of technology, we would bring him into this space no matter what. So I'd like us to give Norm a round of applause.
We love you, Norm.
While we're waiting for Marco to join, I'll give a quick plug for Norm Maddox. Norm Maddox is also a core collective member and has been in a number of our projects. If you've been to our poetry events, Norm is a prolific writer and poet, and his books are for sale. I highly recommend checking them out if you have the means. All 100% of the money will go directly to Norm for those books, so take a peek. While we're all here, oh my goodness, Vayl! We have Vayl here, the playwright. Vayl is zoomed in so we can see Vayl on the wall, but they can't see us. Vayl is here to answer our questions, so I'm going to have the booth let Vayl know we're ready for them to introduce themselves and why they wrote this piece and where these characters came from. Yeah.
Vayl looks snatched.
Yeah.
As per usual.
I'm not sure. Can we hear Vayl? Okay.
Sorry about that. I can't hear and speak at the same time. So just, I can't hear you right now. If you need to get a hold of me, say it in chat. My name is Vayl Larkin. I'm a playwright. I live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm also a poet. I am a former homeless sex worker. In my 20s, I was a subsistence sex worker, and I was homeless for 2 years. And I also had the great privilege of being college educated. And I always felt like I wanted to use those privileges to give back to the community that had supported me for those 2 years, especially, and to the friends I made still in that community. That's my intro. Okay.
Thank you, Vayl. So I have a question for all cast members, and it's going to be the same question. So I'm going to let you think about it, and whoever's ready to answer it may. All of you sitting on this stage right now in scene 5, where Julian's character, the narrator, who is shared by Melanie and Dickie, becomes one of the community and is not just describing things that are happening, right? The idea that we're trying to break is this model of people just talking about people experiencing homelessness rather than listening to each other. So I'm curious from all of you, and we'll talk to Vayl about this and compare their inspiration for that. What changed for you between your body language and your character in your first entrance or your first segment from scene 1 to 4, and what changed for you when you entered into the community feeling in scene 5? How did that shift for you? That could be different for everyone because many of you played a conglomerate of various characters. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that. Anyone may answer, no pressure to do so. All right, Dickie?
Yes, this is Dickie speaking. So I think that fifth scene where it was more of a collaboration, where it was a feeling of unity, you feel that energy, that want, that desire to connect with another person. So that last scene was actually the most exciting for me because, obviously before that I was standing alone in the describing things, and then scene 5 I was able to, moment when we could look at each other, Julian, and for perfect spot, perfect day, those lines, I absolutely loved that. And there's the physical touch going on, and that feeling of unity that we're all just kind of sharing that same space was great.
I think for me it was really cool to overlap on what you were saying on scene 5. The signs use individual alone, and I'm alone, describing sound, and then in scene 5 we all come together and we tried our best to be in the same with the same sign. So that was really the unity part of it. For me, each scene, it was a lecture, but each scene had a different feeling. So for me, it was an emotional roller coaster for each character, and then at the end, it kind of just all combined into one. But it was really interesting.
Kind of piggybacking on that, I found it was really nice to go into a place of love and joy, which is a stark contrast from the character I played. So I did find that helpful and really just enjoyable. It was easy to kind of lean into that in a way because I portrayed felt so isolated, and in ways it was interesting because I felt also still in community with the other performers, and the way they were expressing, I felt also an extension of that. So something about 5, it's to say, I felt like, as opposed to being an extension, it felt more encompassing, and we were all together, which was really an enjoyable shift. And likewise, I enjoyed that we were all in this space, because you're just isolated, for lack of a word, you're there by yourself, and so for us to be together was really, it's nice. I hope it brought the joy of the community of that experience for all of us, and who we're representing.
Marco!
I should go?
Yeah, Margaret, did you hear the question? Okay, well, say your name, your character, and who you are first, and then you can answer.
Hi everybody, thanks for coming. My name is DeMarco. I play the ballet body, and yeah, I'm excited to be here. I can answer those questions. I feel like in the first scene, it was very specific, like I was honed into my specific character, and it was more about what I was doing and how I fit individually in the whole thing. But then when I came together, it was like a collage of those moments, you know, like it felt like now everybody gets to remember a little bit of what everybody was trying to say throughout the
I'll say something about that, because scene 5 is kind of, I guess, it's my scene or whatever. This is a hard piece to perform, and it's because it focuses a lot on things that are sad, or confused, or angry, or outcasts, shunned socially, we say it, right? I think that scene is very important to the piece, but also to me as a performer, because life is sad, life is painful, life is angry and confused, right? But it's not just that. And we all manage to wake up in the morning every day and also have joy. We also have pleasure. We also have connection and feeling with one another. And without sharing that side of the human story, as a storyteller, you're doing a bad job. And those interactions in scene 5, I really felt was us rounding out the story to share the full experience. And I think this piece in general is about how homelessness or living unhoused is not
Hello.
just
Sorry,
that.
I'm getting these questions in chat.
That's all right. If Vayl wants to chime in, but I'll finish. It's not being a homeless person, which a lot of us on this panel have been at one point in our lives, or unhoused. It's not just sad. It's painful, sure, but it's also just as joyous, just as beautiful, just as connected, and just as human as any other life. And I think that's really, to me, the point of the piece that gets told in scene 5. And I'm going to let Vayl tell me if they think that's right.
I'm going to ask the question for the room, and then cue Vayl. So the question that came up from a live stream viewer was describing your intention, Vayl, for keeping these first 4 scenes very isolated and in character vignettes, and then not joining them together until scene 5. What is your inspiration behind these 5 characters? And specifically, who is this narrator musician character that then joins the group?
Hello. The evolution of this play is very complicated. 3 years ago, I wrote a poem about my experiences as a sex worker, which I had never done before. And it is the narration to scene 1. And then I just kept writing, and I kept writing stories of people I had known, friends, found family, those of us who had lived on the street at the time that I was there. And I just kept thinking, no one ever tells these stories. People think of homeless people as this monolith of desperation, and they don't realize that it's a life. You live a life, and there are desperation moments, and there are moments of extreme joy. So I wanted to initially just tell stories. And when I turned this into a play, which was initially done as a radio play, I decided to tie the characters together, and I wrote that narrator scene to do it. And I envisioned this as a series of vignettes followed by a community scene. If I had it to do over again, I might add more of those community scenes, expand it. But as I said, this started out as a poem cycle, and the play is very unexpected. But yeah, I really wanted to convey both the joy and the trauma, the complexity of these characters. And in the first 4 scenes, I really want you to be seeing the characters, because homeless people are ignored by the rest of us all the time. And I wanted to put a homeless character front and center in the middle of the stage and make them the focus for the audience and force people not to look away. So that's the goal.
Thank you, Vayl. I would love to open the floor if anyone has questions for Vayl or for any of the performers, or for me if you are particularly interested in music. I want to mention, though, that we're not holding you hostage, so if you're not interested in staying, we won't be offended if you have to skedaddle at any point. We're trying to capture this on tape because we want this piece to have legs going forward, so it's great to have feedback and questions. So just want to say that. Questions from outside? Yes, sir.
First of all, it was very powerful, so really good job. What was interesting to me for feedback to improve it, there was a real divide in my perception of the emotional success of the body language of each person, which did a great deal to make them real individual people as opposed to just cliches, even though as dance, body movement, it was from one perspective a cliche, but it felt to me very real. And when you said that you wrote it originally as a radio guy, I thought, oh no, this is all wrong. So the strength of this performance is precisely the combination of visual and especially moving visual body language. It reminded me almost like a graphic novel of a classic thing where when you see the graphic novel, you see things at an emotional level that you would miss when you read it just as words on the page. So the most powerful part to me was the individual body language of each actor. And the subject, it's so hard not to be preachy in a setting like this. So words alone, I think, almost it's an impossible job. So combining the words with the physical part of the acting, I think, was the genius of the play and made it really successful.
Thank you.
Thank God.
Just to reiterate for the live stream audience, the play was genius.
Another question? Did you have? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess a statement first. I agree with the previous gentleman. I think that something about how multifaceted this is. I think in a little bit of other things I've seen, there's kind of the central concern, whatever it is, whether it's the play or setting thing, and then there's several ancillary things that contribute. But here, really, everything felt like it had the same level of importance. So I could look at the dance, I could look at the ASL, I could listen to the narrow, I could listen to the music, and no one particular part felt like, well, no, this is the thing you should be listening to or paying attention to. And I guess the question that springs out of that is that this particularly, maybe more than other things, becomes so much more of a collaborative effort where every single thing is important. It's important to work together. So it seems like there's probably not I don't know. This is the question, I guess. What was the collaboration process like? Was there a strong oh hey, you should do this and you should do this, and it seems like there's 5 different things going on, and a bunch of links to everybody talking to each other. So what was that process like of really putting this thing together as it is, in the way that you did it? That's a question.
Do you mind, Enzo?
Let's go.
Sure, I will try to explain it to the best of my abilities, but you kind of just had to be there. Sydney really did the music, right? So Sydney got the composers together and wrote some amazing, prolific, like found object music, which is basically music you can make from things that you find, right? So that was one layer, the music. But the dancing and the choreography was really the interesting part, because we worked separately for quite a few times. I had one-on-one rehearsals with Emma, one-on-one with Justin, one-on-one with Marco via Zoom, because Marco lives in Cleveland, so that was also a fun challenge. So it was definitely separate, and then we had Julian, who is doing all of this reading, right, but also is a character in and of himself in scene 5, so that also needed legs. Melanie took on I think the biggest role in directing the ASL and really finding the link between American English, which is literally not the same as American Sign Language, and you learn that and you're like, we need it's like another language barrier, so you need another translation, and you need to figure out, things have to be like flexible, and people really have to be flexible enough to kind of like devise something, but that's not devised, because it's a script. We're working from a script. We're not making a thing, but we are. So I guess I'm trying to answer this question. I would say that we worked separately for a while, and then bringing in layers of, I think music was maybe the last thing. So it was at first our bodies and the movement and Julian reading and getting used to that, and then adding the ASL and seeing what they were signing during specific words in specific times, and my aid to the choreography of what we're doing with our bodies. Talking to them, also hopping back, talking to each character individually and each person, and figuring out their dance style, what they're comfortable with, and how they relate to their character, which is important, because you don't want to traumatize people who may be stepping into something that triggers something for them. If we were homeless, if we were sex workers, if we, all of the things. And so, I would say it starts with care, and that's not something I think can be taught. You really have to care about the thing, and take care of people, and check in and make sure people are okay. And so with the movement and the words, and then the sign language, and then the music, and then lights and sound, of course, because the technical projection, and that was a whole thing, then coming into the space. I think that's how we bake this cake. But that's just my perspective. I could be wrong.
If I can add to what Enzo was just saying, as a deaf performer, I'm always grateful to have a director of artistic sign language. I think it's something that's not highlighted enough. It's as important. I think in general, any stage production, any TV film set, any kind of production in general, it is vital to have a director of artistic sign language, because often hearing actors have the privilege of reading English and just speaking it, while deaf actors have to read the English, translate it into American Sign Language, and then find the actual intent in the subtext and make that explicit. So that's why I'm super grateful for Melanie for being involved in this project, helping with the translations, really breaking apart that English grammar and syntax. Like everyone's been saying, it is a heavy subject matter. So seeing that translation into visual ASL, that made my job as a deaf actor extraordinarily easier. Because, in the real world, unfortunately, many deaf actors have to work three times as hard as a hearing actor because of all those translations. When you bring in that director of artistic sign language, that onus comes off of us and onto Melanie. And now Melanie's saying absolutely. Yes, I remember when I first got the poem or the scripter from the team, I looked it over and I was like, wow. There's a lot of English auditory language that is in this. It's not necessarily easy to translate to American Sign Language. American Sign Language is something that is visual, that includes body language and facial expressions and gestures and all these components where an English word might not. They might not necessarily have a sign for these words. So finding signs that can fit the concept and the content was a lot of work to do. It was definitely challenging for us in such a short amount of time, but I'm super grateful for the team who sat down and helped us understand the concepts. It wasn't just like, oh, no, go ahead, go read it. You know, I needed to ask and really just kind of be open in front of everyone and ask about the meaning, and people were so open to explaining the things, which helped me decide what sign choices to use. I mean, overall, it was challenging, but I'm so grateful for everyone and all of your patience. I really appreciate it.
That's right. I mean, I want to add something to that too, because okay. Okay. I want to add something to that too. Okay. This is a poem, and it's not just a script, right? Like, it'd be one thing if I like told you a story about how, you know,
the dog went into
Clara woke up and got out of bed and walked into the bathroom and brushed her teeth. Like, that's a series of events, right? But that's not what we're saying. We're saying she isn't in the night. And what does that mean? What is she doing? What is the setting we're describing, right? If you're not a hearing person, it becomes extra difficult to both provide the implied context of what the poem is about, and then also the color of the language. I think that was a lot of the difficulty that we had as a group of speakers sharing this role. It was, are we able to both explain not just that there's a poem being read and there's metaphor, but also explain what's actually happening. That was like double duty. And then to set that at around the same time to movement also, I wonder what the dancers had to say about this, because it changed every rehearsal. It changed every rehearsal. Every single time we added a new piece of information, all of us went home with a new set of notes. And then we came back the next time, it had to change completely again. And so I bet that was really stressful for them. I'll let them speak to that though.
Nikki was gonna go first, right? Oh, are you sure? So yes, as a mover, I want to clarify that just because I remember Vayl made it clear that we're not dancers, and in the sense that like I come from a very strong dance background, as well I'm acting as well. So I did feel for this process it was really a great opportunity to figure out how do I make movement not look like dance. And so it did change my personal approach with it and how I approach the script as a dancer, because we're usually given choreography and you're just gonna do it, right? And I appreciated the freedom, like as Enzo said, I feel like, this was like, also this is a workshop, so you know, we mentioned it's in a short period of time. With that to say, we all kind of like got together for the first time just a little while ago. So it's, even in that, in our own individual processes, once we were all together, absolutely things changed. And for us as movers too, we were having conversations of like, oh, you know, like so-and-so came with their own stuff, and they had more direction, or I came from I feel like very collaborative space with Enzo, where I purposely brought in, this is my interpretation of the script, this is the framework of the movement you're giving. As a dancer though, I don't want it to look like dance necessarily. So, and I feel like to Julian's point too, and Dickie's, once we also were with the speakers, that gave freedom, at least for me, to also have a frame that I know would have to change, depending on the speed, the rate of speech, the rate of interpretation. But I did feel like we were having conversations about what does the script mean in our own individual rights was something we could anchor us in the character. And I felt like, I think, I think that was what I was, my brain. And you know, so it's been, and with the music too, like that was one of the last layers I got, that was just great. It keeps changing, and I feel like even over this past weekend, each performance has been different, both in like how we are, I think the space we're creating, and also the audience, you all that are here with each different day. So,
if I can just add on to that. For me, the biggest challenge and the beautiful thing for the many layers was the part at the end where I had to sign the description of the sound. So we rehearsed, and we knew that there was music, but we didn't know how strong the music really played in a part of this play. So it was music, we knew it, but then like literally right before the actual day of the play, it was really like, hey, you're gonna describe the music, and I'm like, it can't really describe sound. And in opera, it's like I'm not, well versed in opera and up and down, and so I asked Melanie, like, how do you describe sound? Like, bang, or like, what are we doing here? And it's really with the help of Sydney and Sophie. They said it was the feeling. You're describing the feeling. Yes, there's sound, but what is that sound producing? And for me, I think if you were fortunate to come each day, you would have seen me play around with that, because it was hard to get that understanding of the feeling, because we all have our own feelings, and then we're trying to integrate the feeling of that what the music is giving us. So I didn't want to give my interpretation of what it felt, but what the music was trying to just convey, I guess, try to convey in the actual play.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you all. I'm
If I
going
could add something real quick, I'm
Oh.
sorry if I could add to that. So there's something that we discussed as a team. I didn't think that we had to have the sound description, and then I remember during one of the interpreters let us know during the rehearsals, like, hey, there's some opera going on. Like, and I had to think back, like, about full accessibility for the deaf community and for an audience. Like, I mean, as a member of the audience, like, we should know what's going on in the spaces with the sounds and what's happening. So, I mean, everyone's just kind of standing around and waiting, and everyone's hearing the music, and then as a deaf person, you're like, wait, what's going on? So I think it was better to have Alberto also kind of take that responsibility on of providing that description in sign language for the deaf and hard of hearing audiences to see, oh, there is some sound going on, there is that extra layer, there is some stuff we do, when there's language on the screen, we have ASL, we have movers, we have full access for everyone. So and that's why also to create that access for anyone who has any kind of hearing loss and visual, like everyone's covered.
Yeah.
Everything is covered on this, and was covered on the stage.
I will close this question up by coming back to your initial question about, it seems like there's probably a lot of cooks in this kitchen, right? And that is indeed one of the founding principles and like mission statements of the Y Collective. I was an opera singer by trade for a very long time, and I kept feeling like I would enter these spaces as a singer, and I wasn't allowed to have an opinion beyond my own notes that I sang on the page. And I always wondered why. I had plenty of ideas on how to integrate this into other people's languages, whether it be dance or poetry or whatever it might be, right? So I wanted to bring a group of people in here basically speaking 4 languages at the same time. English, poetry, ASL, movement-based narrative, not necessarily dance, but truly telling stories with body, and music. And I wanted very much, I appreciate whoever said that, maybe it was you, that it felt like each element was equally as important, because I think that's the goal. I feel like if you have poetry as beautiful as Vayl's, it can stand alone. And so if you're going to add anything on top of it, it has to be treated with great care. And it's not one person's responsibility to integrate all those things. We have a director who is going to help keep the movement, and the movement is enhancing the text. And then you have the playwright who is helping us to make sure that the text is still heard and not distracted from. We have ASL that is helping add a layer of visual language that is really important for some of this heavy stuff. And then the music was intended to act as the emotional subtext of the characters. So I'm glad you said that it didn't distract from the text, because that was a mandate from Vayl, that number 1, the music be made for free, only with a human voice and found percussion objects. And number 2, wasn't seen. So when Alberto was looking to describe sounds, I said, no, don't tell them that we're hitting on chimes. We're trying to create the voices in Trompe l'oeil's head. We're trying to create the sounds that she may be hearing that we can't. We're trying to create the flashbacks of war that Broadside is hearing, but we don't want you to see that we're playing flower pots, So I'm really glad to hear that feedback, that it felt integrative, and this whole team worked very collaboratively from day one to make that happen. So thank you all for going on this experiment. Yeah.
I just do want to add one last thing. I am super grateful to be part of this story that's focusing on the homeless population, because homelessness is it's so prevalent here in America, especially in New York City. And that's part of why I said yes, that I would love to absolutely be a part of this project. And today, I'm not kidding, but I was actually on the subway, and when I got off the subway, I was walking up the stairs, and I saw a homeless person on the stairs. They were sleeping on the stairs. And they had a big sign that said, "Hello, I'm deaf. Please give me money." And I thought immediately, wow, like, I'm a deaf person. There's another deaf person right there. And I'm on my way to do a show that discusses this exact community. And I wanted to talk with them, but they were sleeping, so I don't want to wake them up. Like, I didn't want to, I don't know how they were necessarily responding to being woken up in the middle of their sleeping, but it really kind of got my thoughts going about today. I was just thinking, wow, like, I'm really happy that this shines a light on this community. I hope that this shines light on the topic of homeless people with disabilities and the different intersectionalities that are involved.
Great, folks, we have time for one more question. Yes?
Hello.
And if it's for Vayl, let me know and I'll
Absolutely. You all did a phenomenal job. This was absolutely amazing. I love the message and you all really got it across. I'm proud of you, my beautiful friend Enzo. But I want to say that coming from Cleveland, Ohio myself, being in New York, it has been a huge culture shock for me, right? So driving around everywhere in Cleveland to now walking and taking the train, right, with all types of people. I've seen people, and I have a group chat with my family, and sometimes I text them, I say, oh my goodness, I seen a guy with a needle in his arm on the train today. Oh, I seen a homeless kid today. I've seen a homeless woman today, right? And every day I also see people that look away from them, right? And every day I'm faced with the challenge of, can I help this person today, or do I have to look away today? So I love this message, and you all were all very passionate, and I felt it, and you really got it across. I want to know, how were you able to tap into your characters? Did you have to pull from trauma? Did you have to think of someone that you know? Like, how were you able to tap into that? And then when you do step back outside, out of character, and you see like homeless people, how do you feel now?
How long you got? I'll say stepping into characters that have a lot of emotional baggage, trauma, and things like that. I do think it's very important for me in my process not to tap into your own personal traumas or to your own personal. It's very important to be a vessel for experience and not actually go back in myself and relive things that are harder to shake off. It's important that I stay open and clear to channel this and not to end up telling the story that is a rehashing of my past, but instead to try to let it be as purely connected to the creative instincts and impulses that are in the text or in the story of the person. But I do pull from real things in my life. There's a magical what if, there's the imagination, right? What if? And I like to think about this too when we play characters that we other very quickly in this world, right? But the reality is, and I like to go as far as like, let's think about murderers, because that's something that we usually all agree, that's bad. But if you stop and think for a second, maybe some of us think murder is bad, maybe some of us don't. But if you stop and think for a second, I'm sure we could all, if we let ourselves spiral a bit, think about things that could push us to the point where we would kill. If certain things happened in your life, if certain people in my life were threatened in certain ways, and from certain types of energies that I feel
are negative enough or deserve to be put out in a certain way, I could see myself going to that place. So I use the magical what if. You know what I mean? What if I was in a situation? How can I see what it takes for somebody to get pulled to a point where this is real for them? And in doing that work, you start to realize that we are not as far distant from the people that we would like to not be like. You know what I mean? We're not that far away from being homeless. There are some choices I've made. There are some places in my life where I know that I'm like, wow, you know, I almost went left, and if I did that, this would have, X, Y, and Z would have happened. Or I almost did this, but somebody said something to me, and just I can, you know, I can't really appreciate those valuable positives without understanding what the other side of it could have been. And so for me, it's about going into that other side and allowing myself for this, in this safe container to say, wow, okay, when these lights come on, what if this was real for me? What if this, so what is my version of protecting? What is my version of regret? What is my version of this under these circumstances? And I think in that, I'm blessed to say that I am able to let it go and then move on. But of course, the lessons, the working in collaboratively this way does change my perspective, I hope, as much as it changes an audience's perspective, so that when I do see people out on the street who remind me of anyone who's portrayed on this stage right now, it makes me feel like they're less othered. I now have one more, they're moved a little bit closer to me, understanding who they are and how closely they are to me. Because we're all a lot closer than we think. That's mine.
Yeah. Actually, so like, on a slightly similar, if I'm honest, I did pull from personal experience. And I will say therapy is very helpful in that. I was homeless in my early 20s, and I will say going into this character, I had to take a moment to think about like not bringing that baggage. So I think I was grateful to also have to focus on schizophrenia that's the character, as opposed to possibly bringing in my own traumas or baggage of being homeless and making that turn into something that it's not meant to be, to honor the character. With that said, like, yeah, exactly. We have to figure out tools so that you're okay when you go back home. But I will say, like, too, I think having self-care tools in that capacity, doing, like, and figuring out a different in, and also doing what ifs, you know. So obviously I've been able to process that. So I felt comfortable to, like, tap into a role that I knew was personal, and also coming from, like, a personal family member who also, I think, had mental illness, and I could relate a lot to Trump, essentially. And I do feel like I felt grateful to have a moment as an artist that I feel in my life I've processed that I could share and help share empathy for others. Because exactly like the story, like, I'm sure people see me would never know some of the stuff I've been through, and I can relate when I see people on the street. And so, yeah, you know, it's like this whole week has been interesting, like, maybe because we're reopening after pandemic, I'm so much, it makes me so sad to see so many, like, homeless people here. And, like, in New York, too, it's easy for us to just be like, are you a con right now on the subway? Like, I used to live in Bushwick, and I'd see the same dude with the same thing. One guy got me. Like, I gave money, he just started walking off the train. I was like, so you're not. Like, so it's really hard that, how do we keep our humanity for others, and I can relate to that, and I'm just grateful that we have a chance in this moment to share a story like that, just to remind people that at the end of the day, humanity is humanity, and, like, it's best to, like, also offer that to each other. Okay. Thanks for letting me share that in this safe space, and so
Do you want to say one more thing?
Yeah. I think all of us have what I call a dark compartment. And we don't have to be living in New York City. I honestly believe, no matter how privileged your life, we all have shades of privilege, we experience stress in very similar ways to one another. And I think we all keep a dark compartment. And it's where we keep those thoughts and feelings that we would judge ourselves for having, that we don't think we should have. Those are bad. Those are not us. They are us. And we have a little bag, a little box of them, a little dark compartment inside. I would echo what Mary Angela said. Therapy is a very strong tool, and I highly recommend it for everyone. I would also like to just put out to the universe that I believe everyone should have access to therapy, and that there should not be a money wall between people and the help that they need for their mental health or their physical health while we're at it. Maybe healthcare itself should be free. Sorry.
Keep going.
Don't say that.
I will say that dark compartment is not something that I would recommend leaving locked and never processed. I would highly recommend looking yourself in the mirror, close your eyes and look inward, and find that shadow in yourself. Find that darkness, that anger that you carry. Because, damn it, your sister's so passive-aggressive every time you see her and you're tired of her shit. Right? Find that. And find your process for it. I don't know if for you it is dance or exercise. I don't know if for you it is singing with people. For me, art has been useful. For some people, it's church. For some people, it is municipal government. People go out and help in their communities with their hands on cleaning up. Whatever it is to actively process what you're keeping in your dark compartment, I would highly recommend leaning into that, because it does have a limit. And when it's full, you'll start to notice it reverberating out into your lives and your relationships and the actions that you take. And it can be dark and ugly on the outside. You don't even know why it's happening or what's going on, right? And to echo what Justin said, recognize that people who are going through something else other than you, they're living a life on earth, and so are you. It's the same thing. We are, and if we can hold that thought and that feeling very actively, that there is no separation between you and I think that's the beginning of the kind of community thinking that the collective is trying to build through art, but others are trying to build through a myriad of ways in our world. This is a very preachy moment. Like you said, very easy to get preachy about this. But please access and process your dark stuff. And we do it through all sorts of ways. Sometimes we just throw on music and we dance. And sometimes it's, if you need to go walk in the park or whatever you need to do. I really highly recommend. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
I'm not going to add a lot. And Nikki, please, if you want to just say something, please jump in. But
no, I was just funny.
Oh, okay. I would say that I have, in terms of approaching this work, because I've done sex work before, playing a sex worker is like, me and Vayl talked a lot about Graffiti Body's character, but for me, I have like a very convenient compartmentalization process. So those little boxes you were talking about, and I've had to do it throughout school, throughout just multitasking the things of life. And so it's easy to just go, this was the character and I'm leaving the theater so I can leave that and like literally pick it up physically when I get there. I think one of the things that was so exhausting for me during 2020, I don't even want to say the C word, but during 2020, like it was like I'm inside, I can't compartmentalize because whatever is happening, like I can't just close the Zoom thing and now I'm somewhere else. I'm literally, the hell is in my house. Like I can't escape. And so I think besides the care, the leaning into community and having like y'all and just us all being like, ooh, some shit, ain't it? Oh, okay, cool. I was the only one. And being able to process that and like really have people that you can lean on was the biggest help. And I think the way through, you really shouldn't do shit alone. I don't really think any human being should be doing anything alone. You need community. You need friends. You need family, whether that's blood family or found family. I have so much found family in New York City. It's essential to life.
Thanks, Enzo. Okay, we have to wrap in 3 minutes, but I wanted to give Vayl the last word. There's a question that popped up for Vayl. How do you feel seeing your words on their feet for the first time, and what are your hopes for the future of it? And then we'll let y'all go.
I'm here. Seeing this magical, and I mean that literally. I wrote some poems, and now there's a play. I envisioned body movement. I conceptualized music, and I knew that I wanted it to be fully, not just accessible. I didn't just want ASL translation. I wanted it integrated. So I wanted something for everyone, no matter what their ability. So if you're deaf, there's lots of visuals. If you're blind, there should be lots of auditory. We have the ASL performers, and they're part of the scene instead of off, on a podium someplace. And the script for the play has the ASL performers actually on stage moving more, but this is a workshop, so. My long-term goals for this piece are, I would like to see it performed in a few more cities, maybe a few more runs in New York, because it's an incredibly significant city, not only for theater, but also because of its homeless population. And ultimately, my goal is to make this a Creative Commons release available to organizations that work, grassroots organizations that work with homeless populations. And the idea is that this should be simple enough for a community theater to put on, maybe with a few modifications from the production we made, but there's a version of this that can be put on in somebody's, Legion Hall. And I want that so that it can be used as a fundraiser for the people who need it. Because these are not my stories. The first one is kind of my story, but the rest of them are not mine. And it's very important to me that I give back to the community whose stories they belong, the community they belong to. I'm a word person. Thanks.
Thank you, Vayl.
Thank you, Vayl. Thank you so much, cast, everyone who came and stayed for this. You're always welcome to write to us, thewhycollective@gmail.com, and to send us any other thoughts that you come up with as you let this marinate. Have a wonderful, wonderful